Nobody tells you when you've become an adult. There's no moment, no ceremony, no email that arrives one morning saying, "Congratulations, you've made it. You are now a functioning grown-up. Please act accordingly." Instead, there's just a feeling that keeps not arriving, a quiet, persistent sense that everyone else figured something out that you somehow missed, that real adults are out there somewhere handling things, knowing things, while you're still running on improvisation and hope that nobody notices. And the worst part, that feeling doesn't get better with age. It doesn't disappear when you get the job, or the apartment, or the relationship, or the decade of experience that's supposed to make you confident. If anything, it gets quieter, but it stays. I've spoken to people in their 40s who still feel it, doctors, lawyers, parents, people who are by every external measure completely adult, and privately still waiting to feel like one. And maybe that's you right now. You're paying bills, you're showing up to work, you're making decisions that affect other people. You are doing, by any reasonable definition, adult things every single day. And yet, somewhere underneath it all, there's still this voice asking, am I actually doing this right, or am I just getting away with it? That question is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's one of the most widely shared experiences of modern life, and there's a very specific reason it's happening. One that has far less to do with you and far more to do with how adulthood itself has structurally collapsed as a concept. For almost all of human history, adulthood wasn't a feeling. It was an event. You reached a certain age. You took on a role. Farmer, soldier, tradesman, wife. That role came with a clear identity, a clear set of expectations, a clear place in the world. You didn't choose it. You didn't have to feel ready for it. You just stepped in, and the role held you. In most traditional cultures, there were formal rites of passage to mark the moment, not birthday parties with cake, real ceremonies, public rituals that said to the community, this person has crossed the line. They are no longer a child. We all witnessed this. The point wasn't the ritual itself. The point was what happened after. You were seen differently, treated differently. You had a new role, and the community enforced it, reflected it back at you, made it real. That recognition, being seen as adult by the people around you, was what created the internal feeling of being one. We dismantled that system, and we didn't replace it with anything. Modern adulthood has no clear threshold. Instead, it has a loose collection of milestones: finishing school, starting a career, leaving home, entering a serious relationship. And over the past 50 years, every single one of those milestones has been delayed or quietly made optional. People are marrying later, buying homes later, having children later, or not at all. The markers that used to signal arrival have become moving targets. And here's the trap. When you're waiting for milestones that keep moving, you never feel like you've arrived. You're always almost there, always in the next phase, always about to become the adult you're supposed to be. Psychologists have a name for this in-between state. They call it emerging adulthood, a distinct life phase, roughly from 18 to 29, that didn't really exist 50 years ago. Not childhood, not adulthood, something suspended between the two, a holding pattern with no scheduled landing. If that feeling of being stuck in between sounds familiar, that sense that your real life hasn't quite started yet, I have a whole video specifically on that. It's the quarter life crisis, and it goes much deeper into exactly this phase. I'll link it right here. Millions of people are living there, and the longer you live there, the harder it becomes to believe you'll ever fully leave. But there's something else happening, something psychological, and it's more personal than the structural stuff. Most people carry a mental image of what a real adult looks like: competent, calm, under pressure. They know what to do when things break and how to navigate difficult conversations without falling apart. They have direction. They make decisions and live with them. They don't spend Sunday nights in low-grade panic about whether they've made all the wrong choices. And then there's you, with all your doubt, all your uncertainty, all your improvised decisions, and quiet 2 a.m. questions. The gap between that image and your reality feels damning. What you never see, what you fundamentally cannot see, is that the person next to you is running exactly the same comparison and arriving at exactly the same conclusion. The confident adult in your mental image is largely a fiction, a composite built from other people's performances. Nobody has access to someone else's inner monologue. You only ever see the outside, so you compare your inside to their outside, and that comparison will always make you feel like you're failing. Studies consistently show that up to 70% of people experience what psychologists call imposter syndrome, the persistent feeling of being a fraud, of not deserving your position, of waiting to be found out. And that's in professional settings where there are clear credentials and measurable results. Apply that to adulthood itself, where the credentials don't exist and the results are impossible to measure, and you start to understand why almost nobody feels settled. We are all performing competence in a role we were never trained for, hoping the performance is convincing enough that no one calls it. Now layer something on top of this that is specific to this generation. You were raised with a particular message. You can be anything. Follow your passion. Don't settle for less than the life you deserve. These aren't bad ideas, but they created a particular kind of psychological trap. If you can be anything, then being something specific feels like giving up on everything else. If you're supposed to follow your passion, then choosing a path that isn't your perfect calling feels like failure. If you're special, then an ordinary life, which is by definition what most lives are, feels like a defeat. And so a generation arrived at adulthood unable to fully commit, not because they're irresponsible, but because commitment feels like loss. The moment you choose this city, this relationship, this career, this version of yourself, you've ruled out all the other versions, and you were told you'd never have to do that. This is something I looked at much more closely in another video: why modern life makes everything feel temporary, why commitment has become so hard, and what that actually costs us. If that's resonating, I'll link it here. Adulthood has always required this trade. It has always meant choosing specifically and irreversibly at the cost of the alternatives. But nobody told this generation that. They were told the right life would feel obvious, would feel limitless, would feel like arrival. So when the choosing feels hard, when the right answer doesn't announce itself, people conclude that something must have gone wrong, that they must be doing it wrong, that the real adults found a shortcut they missed. There is no shortcut. There never was. One more thing worth naming before we get to what actually helps. Part of what makes adulthood feel so unstable is that the things which used to anchor it, stable friendships, rooted communities, long-term relationships, have become much harder to maintain. We move more, we change jobs more, we lose touch more. The connective tissue of adult life keeps fraying, and with it goes a big part of what used to make people feel grounded. I made a full video on exactly why friendships quietly disappear in adult life and what we can actually do about it. If that's something you're feeling too, it's linked right here. And if you've noticed that the years seem to be passing faster than they used to, that whole months are disappearing without feeling like they happened, there's a specific psychological reason for that too, broken down in detail in another video. I'll link that one as well. Here's what the research actually shows. The feeling of adulthood, the settled, grounded sense that you are living your own life, doesn't come from achieving the right milestones. It doesn't come from age or status or accumulation. It comes from one thing: taking genuine ownership of your own choices, including the uncertain ones, including the ones that might be wrong. Psychologists call this agency, the experience of being the author of your own life rather than a passenger in it. And agency is not something you have before you start making decisions. It's something you build by making them. You do not feel capable and then act. act, and the feeling of capability follows slowly, imperfectly, never completely, but it follows. The people who seem most adult aren't the ones who figured it all out. They're the ones who decided to act as if they had, even when they didn't, who made calls without certainty, who committed to things knowing they might be wrong, who stopped treating their life as a rough draft and started living it as the real thing. Here is the truth nobody says out loud. Adulthood was never a destination. There is no finish line you cross, no morning you wake up feeling finally, completely ready. The people who seem the most grounded aren't waiting for that morning. They gave up waiting for it and started living anyway. That's the whole thing. Not readiness, not certainty, just the quiet decision made alone without a ceremony or a witness to stop asking for permission to begin your own life. You are not behind. You are not broken. You have not missed something that everyone else quietly received. The moment you stop waiting to feel like an adult and simply choose to be one is the moment it begins. Not as a feeling, as a fact, because adulthood was never something you discovered. It was something you decided. Most people are asking the same questions. Few take the time to explore them. Keep exploring.